The galaxy had forgotten humanity. For centuries, the once vibrant species that had conquered stars and built empires across the universe was nowhere to be found. No transmissions, no ships, no messages. The stars that were once populated with human colonies and thriving cities were now silent, empty. Aliens had long since assumed that humanity had vanished, wiped out by some unknown catastrophe. The records they kept spoke of a mighty people, but the stories had turned to myth, and the myths faded into nothingness. But in the dark, forgotten corners of space, something stirred. The Vanguard, a ship older than many of the galaxies themselves, drifted through the vast emptiness. Its hull was battered, covered in cosmic dust, but its engines roared back to life. The ship's journey had begun long ago, and its purpose was clear. Humanity was returning. The crew aboard the Vanguard had waited for this moment, trained for this day, prepared to rise from the ashes of the past. They had stayed hidden, developing, in secret, building their strength, and now, they were finally ready to come out of the shadows. As the Vanguard emerged from the dark abyss of space, it passed an abandoned human colony. The once thriving settlement was now just a shell of its former self. Ruins and overgrown vegetation were all that remained, yet the signs were unmistakable. This was a human world. A few alien ships passed by, unaware of what was about to happen. They had no idea that the silence they had grown comfortable with was about to be shattered in the heart of the ship. The human crew stood together, watching the dark void of space through the large viewing windows. They had waited for this moment for so long. They had heard the rumors of what had become of humanity's former worlds, how they had been abandoned, how the galaxy had moved on without them. But this crew knew the truth. They knew what their people had become. No longer were humans the fragile beings that once relied on outdated technology. Now they were stronger, smarter, and more advanced than ever before. The captain, Ava Carter, stood at the front of the bridge. Her face was set with determination, and there was a fire in her eyes that matched the intensity of the mission they were on. She glanced over at her crew, each of them a product of decades of research and development. These humans weren't just survivors. They were warriors, enhanced beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. They had been trained to take back what was once theirs. Prepare to land, Ava commanded, her voice calm but full of authority. Her second in command, Leo Dawes, checked the monitors. All systems are go, we're clear to land. Captain, the ship descended, cutting through the atmosphere of the long-forgotten human world. The planet was barren, its cities long abandoned, but to the crew of the Vanguard, it was a symbol of their return. The very soil beneath their feet was proof that humanity had once stood strong, and it was about to do so again. The moment the Vanguard touched down on the surface, a hush fell over the crew. For the first time in generations, they had returned to a world that had once been their home. But this wasn't the same humanity that had left. They were no longer the weak, struggling species that had once been defeated. They were something more. They were a force, and the galaxy was about to learn that. Ava led her crew outside, stepping onto the dusty soil. She felt the weight of the moment. The wind was still, and the air was thick with the remnants of old human civilization. As she took a step forward, her boots left the first footprint on this planet in centuries. It was a small gesture, but it held meaning. Humanity was back, and they weren't going anywhere. They set up their equipment and began sending out signals to nearby galaxies, reaching out to anyone who might still be listening. At first, there was only silence. But then, a faint signal came through. It was weak, distorted, but unmistakable. A transmission from a distant alien fleet. We are humans, descendants of the old Earth. Ava's voice echoed through the communications system, the words carrying through the cold vastness of space. We have returned. The transmission was brief, but the shock it sent through the galaxy was immediate. Aliens who had long forgotten the humans of old began to listen. For them, humanity's sudden return was an anomaly, a mystery that couldn't be ignored. The Federation of Galaxies had been in control for hundreds of years. They had grown complacent in their dominance, believing no species could rise to challenge them. But they were wrong. Humanity was back, and they were stronger than ever. The first few reactions from the galaxy were varied. Some alien races were intrigued, wondering how humanity had survived for so long in silence. Others were immediately fearful, sensing that humanity's return was not just a simple revival, it was a declaration of war. The powerful and proud alien species that once crushed human colonies would now have to reckon with what they had left behind. On distant worlds, officials from the Federation gathered in secret councils, trying to make sense of the news. How had humanity survived? How had they returned? And more importantly, what did they want now? But no one had answers. The humans hadn't shared their full story. They had simply sent a message: we are back, and we are ready. And so, the silence was broken. The galaxy was no longer peaceful. Humanity had returned, and with them, a storm was coming. Humanity's return to the stars was not just a surprise, it was a revelation. As the Vanguard settled onto the barren world, the crew aboard knew something the rest of the galaxy didn't. This was just the beginning. The Federation, and every other alien race that had flourished in their absence, had no idea what humanity had become in the centuries of silence. They had not been idle. The humans aboard the Vanguard were not the fragile species they once were, waiting to be crushed under the heel of alien dominion. No, they were transformed, powerful, resourceful, and capable of feats that no one could have anticipated. Ava Carter stood at the helm, her eyes scanning the barren landscape that stretched before them. It was a haunting sight, one of long-forgotten memories and endless possibilities. The wind blew gently across the surface, carrying with it the faint scent of old Earth. But Ava was not focused on the planet beneath her feet. She was thinking about what they had built in secret. The humans were stronger now physically, mentally, and technologically. The years they had spent in isolation were not a retreat, they were a crucible. Humanity had forged new technologies, developed cutting-edge weapons, and had, through decades of genetic engineering and cybernetic enhancements, become an unstoppable force. The Vanguard was only a symbol of what had been achieved. The true power of humanity lay in their ability to adapt, to evolve, and to conquer. Leo Dors, her second-in-command, approached, his face set with a determined expression. He looked at the landscape but spoke to Ava with the same quiet confidence that had become the backbone of their crew. Everything is ready. The equipment, the communications, are everything. Ava nodded, her mind already moving forward. Then let's make sure they hear us. Let's show them who we are now. The crew had been quietly preparing for this moment, activating their advanced technology and systems. The humans had no desire to sneak back into the galaxy unnoticed. No, they wanted to send a message, a loud, undeniable message that humanity was back. And they were not here to beg for a seat at the table. They were here to take their rightful place, to remind the galaxy of their strength. The Vanguard's communication system flickered to life, sending a signal out across the stars. Ava's voice echoed through the device as she spoke, her words carrying through the void with the kind of authority that only someone who knew the stakes could command. We are humanity, she said, and we are not who you remember. We have evolved, we have become something greater, and we are taking back what is ours. Her voice was met with silence, the kind of silence that speaks louder than any words. The galaxy, for the first time in centuries, was on edge. The Federation, the dominant power in the universe, had dismissed humanity's potential long ago. They had eradicated any trace of human civilization from their records. Now, a single ship had reappeared, and it wasn't just a ship, it was a declaration of war. Ava's team worked tirelessly, readying their advanced weapons and defensive systems. The galaxy might not have believed in humanity's strength, but the crew aboard the Vanguard knew better. They had developed new technologies that would make even the most powerful alien fleets tremble. Their weapons could tear through shields that had once been thought invulnerable, and their soldiers, enhanced beyond the limits of any known species, were prepared for any challenge. The first alien ships to approach were small reconnaissance vessels, eager to investigate the sudden reappearance of humanity. They had been monitoring human history through ancient records, but the legends had long been dismissed as fantasy. But now these alien ships found themselves face to face with the reality of humanity's return. The message was clear. There was no room for error. Ava didn't wait for the aliens to make the first move. She knew that hesitation would only invite more danger. With a single command, she authorized the weapon systems. The Vanguard unleashed its first volley of energy blast, blinding, destructive beams that tore through the alien ships with ease. The ships, despite their advanced technology, couldn't match the firepower that humanity now wielded. Within moments, the small fleet was decimated, their remnants floating aimlessly in space. It was a message to anyone who might have doubts. Humanity was back, and they were more than capable of defending their place in the galaxy. The battle wasn't just about the weapons, it was about the psychological shockwave humanity sent rippling through the galaxy. The Federation, who had grown complacent in their dominance, could not fathom how this had happened. The aliens had assumed humanity was no more, that they were nothing but a forgotten species. But now, they had a new enemy, a powerful, unpredictable force that had been waiting, watching, and preparing for this moment. Back on the Vanguard, the crew was silent. They didn't need to celebrate their victory. They knew it was only the beginning. There was still so much to be done. Ava turned to Leo, her eyes hard with determination. Prepare the next phase. We need to make sure the entire galaxy knows who we are, she said, her voice unwavering. Already in motion. Captain, Leo replied, a hint of excitement in his tone. We've already started sending out our location. Let's see how long it takes for the Federation to respond. Ava didn't smile, but there was a flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. This was just the first step. The Federation, and any other race that thought themselves above humanity, were about to learn a harsh truth. Humanity was not a species to be underestimated, and their silence had only been a preparation for the storm that was now coming. And in that moment, Ava Carter knew that the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity's return was not just a whisper in the wind, it was a roar that would echo across the stars, shaking every corner of the universe to its core. The echoes of the Vanguard's message had barely faded when the alien fleets arrived. They came from every corner of the galaxy, drawn by the sudden shift in the power balance. Their sensors detected the human ship, and their commanders saw it as an immediate threat, one that could not be allowed to grow. This wasn't just about a single ship, however. The Vanguard had become a symbol, and in the eyes of the galaxy's rulers, humanity's return was not something that could be ignored. It was a spark and a powder keg that could ignite a conflict unlike any the galaxy had seen before. As the first alien fleet entered the system, they were met by an unexpected sight. Humanity's ship was silent, motionless. There were no transmissions, no calls for negotiation. It was a waiting game. The aliens advanced slowly, cautiously, unsure of what to expect. But as they neared the Vanguard, a chilling realization swept through the ranks. This wasn't just a human ship. It was an ambush waiting to happen. The Vanguard's systems activated. In an instant, automated defense drones launched from hidden bays along the ship's hull, swarming toward the approaching alien fleet with incredible speed. These drones were unlike anything the aliens had ever encountered. Smaller, faster, and equipped with weapons that could cut through shields in seconds. The drones tore through the alien ships before they had a chance to retaliate. The first blast from a drone hit its target, a massive alien cruiser, cracking its shield like a fragile eggshell. Before the alien crew could respond, another blast erupted from the Vanguard, this time from a hidden turret that had been camouflaged within the ship's exterior. The turret unleashed a devastating energy pulse, causing the alien ship to shudder and burn from within. Within moments, the cruiser was disabled, its systems collapsing under the pressure of humanity's advanced weaponry. The alien fleet faltered. Their commanders, who had been expecting an easy victory, were thrown into disarray. The Vanguard had struck first, and it had struck hard. The element of surprise was on humanity's side, and it was paying off in a way the aliens could not have anticipated. For a moment the entire fleet hesitated, unsure of how to proceed, but then, they responded with force. The alien fleet, comprised of various species with unique strengths and advanced technologies, coordinated a counterattack. Massive energy beams lanced through space, slicing through the blackness with terrifying precision. Their ships fired relentlessly, their weapons designed to obliterate any threat that dared challenge their dominance. But the humans aboard the Vanguard were prepared. They had anticipated this moment, and their technology was more than a match for the aliens' raw power. The Vanguard's shields flared under the pressure, but they held strong. As the alien ships closed in, the humans launched another surprise. A series of missiles shot from hidden bays on the ship, streaking through space with deadly accuracy. These missiles, though not as powerful as the ship's main weapons, were designed to destabilize enemy forces and create chaos. They did exactly that. Alien ships were forced to maneuver to avoid the incoming missiles, breaking their formations and scattering into the void. The humans had turned their defense into an offensive weapon, forcing the aliens to fight on their terms. As the battle raged on, Ava Carter stood at the helm of the Vanguard, her mind focused, her resolve unshaken. She watched as her crew worked, in perfect synchronization, each of them performing their duties flawlessly. The ship's systems hummed with power, and every move they made was deliberate, calculated. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a statement, a message to every alien fleet that humanity was not here to beg for peace. They were here to reclaim their place in the stars. But even as the Vanguard tore through the alien forces, there was no time to celebrate. Ava knew that this was only the beginning. The Federation wouldn't take kindly to this kind of resistance. They had grown complacent in their power, and now they were being forced to reckon with the return of humanity. If anything, this battle would only escalate. Across the battlefield, the alien fleet commanders issued new orders, their tactics shifting in response to humanity's unexpected strength. They began to regroup, focusing on overwhelming the Vanguard. With sheer numbers, a massive warship, several times the size of the Vanguard, moved into position. Its weapons powered up, and its entire hull glowed with the energy of 100 reactors. It was the largest ship in the fleet, and it was meant to end the battle once and for all. But the Vanguard was not alone. As the alien warship drew closer, a new signal rang out from deep within the human fleet. A second wave of ships emerged from the shadows, sleek and fast, their engines cutting through the void like razor blades. These ships, human-made and powered by the same advanced technology, dove into the fray with ruthless precision. They had been hidden, waiting for the right moment to strike. The battle intensified as both sides threw everything they had into the conflict. Energy blasts collided, ships twisted and turned through space, and the very fabric of the galaxy seemed to tremble. Under the weight of the violence unfolding, Ava's voice came through the comms, her tone calm but commanding. "Focus fire on their command ship. We need to cripple their leadership if we want to win this." The Vanguard fired once more, its weapons discharging in a blinding flash that illuminated the entire system. The alien warship's shields flickered under the onslaught, and for a moment it seemed as though victory was within reach. But then, the unthinkable happened. From the heart of the alien warship, a powerful shockwave blasted outward, tearing through space and sending a wave of destruction across the battlefield. The Vanguard was hit, and its systems shuddered under the strain. For a moment, the crew feared the worst, but Ava's voice, unwavering and resolute, broke through the chaos. "Brace yourselves, we fight on." The humans had just shown the galaxy what they were capable of. The battle was far from over, but one thing was clear: humanity was back, and they weren't going to be pushed aside again. The battle had only just begun, but already, the winds of change were blowing across the galaxy. Humanity's first strike had been more than a show of strength. It had been a promise. The Federation, once secure in its power, now found itself facing an enemy unlike any it had anticipated. The humans were not just warriors. They were a new breed and evolved species, enhanced by technology and driven by an unwavering desire to reclaim their place among the stars. In the wake of their victory, the crew of the Vanguard moved quickly to consolidate their position. The fleet's commander, Ava Carter, knew that the next step was crucial. They had struck the first blow, but if humanity was to secure a future in the galaxy, they had to act with precision. The alien forces, though scattered, would not forget the humiliation they had just suffered. Ava could feel the pressure mounting with each passing moment. Knowing the Federation's response would not be slow, Ava stood at the bridge, her eyes scanning the horizon of deep space. The faint glow of distant stars flickered against the dark backdrop, a constant reminder of how far humanity had come and how much was still at stake. "Prepare for the next phase," she ordered quietly, her voice calm but full of purpose. "We will not rest until the galaxy understands that humanity is back, but we'll do it on our terms." Leo Dawes, her second in command, stood beside her. His face was streaked with sweat from the battle, but his resolve was just as strong as hers. "We've already started sending out feelers to other human colonies," he said, glancing at the communication screen. "Some are still unresponsive, but others are ready. We're not alone in this, Ava." The words hung in the air, a promise of hope. Humanity wasn't just a solitary force anymore. They had scattered to the far reaches of space, building new colonies and creating new lives, far from the wars they had once fought. But now, the time had come to reunite. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about reasserting dominance. The Federation's council, made up of the most powerful alien species in the galaxy, convened quickly. They had been watching the events unfold, trying to understand just what humanity had become. For centuries, they had assumed that the human race was nothing but a faded memory, a relic of the past. But this new generation of humans was different. They had developed technology beyond what the Federation had seen. They had embraced their weaknesses and turned them into strengths. The Federation's leaders had one objective now: to eliminate the threat before it could spread any further. They underestimated humanity's resolve, thinking their advanced fleets and overwhelming numbers would be enough to wipe them out. But they were wrong. On the Vanguard, the humans began their next move. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something far greater: control of their destiny. The Vanguard's weapon systems were upgraded, ready for the next phase of their campaign. The mission was clear: they would strike hard and fast, creating enough chaos to destabilize the Federation and force them to listen. The time for diplomacy had passed. Humanity would take what was theirs. As the vanguard traveled through the galaxy, their next target came into view, a powerful alien faction that had long held dominance over a significant portion of the galaxy. Their fleets had been involved in the original destruction of human colonies centuries ago. They were the ones who had believed humanity was nothing more than a footnote in history. Now, they would feel the full weight of humanity's return. Ava studied the alien fleet, its massive ships moving in perfect formation. These were not the weak, scattered fleets the humans had encountered earlier. This was the heart of the Federation's military might. Ava's fingers tightened around the console as she prepared to give the command. The humans would not retreat. They would strike first, as they always had. Send the signal, Ava ordered. It's time to show them what we can do. The humans launched their assault without hesitation. The Vanguard's weapons lit up the darkness of space, sending devastating energy blasts into the alien fleet. Each shot was precise, calculated, to cause maximum damage to their target. The aliens fought back with everything they had, but humanity's new technology was more advanced, more deadly than anything they could throw at them. The Vanguard moved through the chaos, its crew coordinating the attacks with unmatched efficiency. The alien ships were quickly overwhelmed, their shields collapsing under the relentless assault. One by one, their ships fell, unable to withstand the power of humanity's weapons. Ava watched as the alien fleet began to break apart, their formations shattering. The Vanguard's crew had taken the initiative, and the Federation's military commanders had been left scrambling to adjust their tactics. But it was already too late. The humans had come prepared, and now they were proving that the galaxy was not going to be ruled by the Federation anymore. Yet even as victory seemed within reach, Ava knew this was only part of the plan. The Federation would retaliate, and it would be their retaliation that determined the future of humanity. Ava and her crew were ready, but they had to move quickly. There could be no room for error. The Federation would not take kindly to this rebellion. The humans were fighting not just for their survival, but for their future. They were fighting to ensure that they would never again be overlooked, never again be seen as weak or insignificant. The Federation might control the galaxy, but humanity had something far more powerful, the will to fight and the strength to rebuild. We've made our point, Leo said, his voice filled with urgency. But we can't afford to stop now. We have to keep pushing. Ava nodded, her expression resolute. We will. Humanity's future depends on it. As the battle continued to unfold, the galaxy began to understand something they had never fully grasped before. Humanity was not just a species, it was a force, and they would fight for their place at the top, no matter the cost. The aftermath of the battle left the galaxy in a state of uneasy tension. Humanity's return had shaken the foundation of the Federation, and the alien races that had once thought themselves untouchable now faced an undeniable truth. Humanity was back. But the Federation wasn't just going to let go of their power so easily. They had already begun to regroup, analyzing their defeat and seeking revenge. The galaxy's political landscape had shifted, and the question now wasn't if there would be war, but when. Ava Carter stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, staring into the void of space, her thoughts heavy with the weight of what was to come. They had won a significant battle, but Ava knew the real war was only beginning. The Federation was regrouping, and they would come back stronger, faster, and more determined. The question was, could humanity hold its ground? Behind her, the hum of the ship's systems kept pace with the tension in the air. Leo Dawes, her second in command, approached her, his face grim. He'd seen it tooth the signs that the Federation was already planning its next move. We've got a response from the Council, he said quietly, his voice tinged with uncertainty. They're not backing down. Ava turned to him, her expression unreadable. What are they planning? Leo handed her a datapad. Offensive. The Federation's most powerful fleets are assembling. They want to crush us before we can grow any stronger. Ava's eyes scanned the data. A chill ran down her spine as she processed the information. The Federation wasn't just fighting for control, they were fighting to annihilate humanity before they became too powerful. The humans had caught them off guard once, but this time, they would be ready. They think they can wipe us out, Ava said, her voice low but filled with a quiet fury. They think we're a threat to their supremacy, and they're right. But we won't go down without a fight, Leo replied, his voice steady. No, Ava agreed, her eyes narrowing. We'll fight. But we need to prepare. We need to make sure we're ready for what comes next. With a determined nod, Ava turned to the rest of the crew. This isn't just about surviving anymore, she said, her voice gaining strength. "This is about taking our place in the galaxy. We're not going to let anyone push us around again. We're going to make them fear us." The Vanguard's crew rallied behind her. They had seen the power of humanity's new technologies, felt the rush of victory in their veins, and they weren't going to let it slip away. But it wasn't just about fighting with superior technology, it was about strategy, alliances, and knowing that every move they made had the potential to change the course of the war. Ava's next steps were clear. They needed to gather allies. The Federation wasn't the only power in the galaxy, and many species had been watching humanity's rise with interest. Some were frightened, others intrigued, but all of them understood one thing: humanity wasn't going to be a pushover. Ava knew that if they could unite other factions, other alien species who shared their distrust of the Federation, they might have a chance at victory. The first step was contacting the Gerians, a nomadic species known for their cunning and stealth capabilities. They had no love for the Federation, who had tried to force their hands in the past. If humanity could persuade them to join the fight, they would add a much-needed advantage to the cause. "We'll send out a fleet," Leo suggested, his eyes lighting up with the prospect of bringing in the "They won't expect it." Ava nodded. "Do it, and make sure they understand what's at stake. This isn't just about humanity anymore, it's about the future of the galaxy." As the Vanguard's communication array sent out the signal to the Gerians, Ava's thoughts turned to the future. The Federation was a behemoth, and every step they took to resist would cost them, but it was a risk they had to take. If humanity didn't push back now, they would be crushed under the weight of the Federation's power. They had no choice but to move forward. Days turned into weeks as the battle plans were drawn, alliances formed, and resources gathered. The Gerians, after some negotiation, agreed to assist. Though their terms were strict, they demanded certain freedoms and assurances that they would not be subjugated by humanity's growing power. It was a delicate balance, but Ava knew that it was a necessary one. Humanity wasn't going to win this war by sheer force alone. They needed ally species, with strengths they didn't yet possess. The Gerians brought intelligence, speed, and adaptability to the table. Their ability to strike quickly and disappear into the shadows could turn the tide in key moments of the battle. The Federation had no idea what was coming. The Federation was also beginning to feel the pressure. Their fleets, once confident in their ability to crush any opposition, were now facing a new and unpredictable enemy. Their commanders could no longer afford to underestimate humanity. They had seen what happened when they did, and the cost had been high. But the Federation was vast, and its resolve was unyielding. They would fight back with everything they had. And so, the stage was set for the next great conflict. Humanity and its allies would face the Federation's full might in a battle that would determine not only their fate but the future of the galaxy itself. Ava stood at the front of the Vanguard, watching the fleet prepare for battle. The tension was palpable. She could feel the weight of the coming war pressing down on her. But there was no turning back now. Humanity had come this far, and they would fight with everything they had. The Federation had underestimated them once before. They wouldn't make the same mistake again. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about rewriting history. And Ava Carter was determined to ensure that humanity's place in the galaxy would never again be in doubt. The silence between the two forces felt heavier than ever. After weeks of constant skirmishes, strategic moves, and power plays, the Federation had finally called for a meeting of the highest council. The Federation had never imagined that such a small group of humans could grow into such a formidable threat. But now they knew they couldn't afford to underestimate them again. Humanity wasn't just back, they were a challenge to the very fabric of the galaxy's established order. Ava stood before the Vanguard's main holomap, her eyes scanning the coordinates and the battle reports coming in from across the galaxy. The Federation had mobilized everything except for one thing: their pride. Ava knew that if they didn't act quickly, the Federation would unite under a banner of vengeance, and no amount of strategy or technology would save them. This was the most crucial moment yet. "We've got one chance," Leo said, his voice tight with frustration. "The Federation's fleets are starting to consolidate. They've regrouped and formed alliances of their own. If we don't hit them hard now, we'll be facing overwhelming numbers in every direction." Ava nodded slowly, her fingers brushing the edge of the holographic map. The Federation was powerful, but they weren't invincible. Humanity had already shown the galaxy that their return wasn't just a fleeting moment. The humans had the upper hand in technology and innovation. They had something the Federation couldn't understand: a drive to survive, to rebuild, and most of all to never be forgotten again. "We need to take out their command structure." Ava finally spoke, her voice sharp. Without their leadership, their forces will fall into chaos. The Federation depends too heavily on its hierarchy. If we can disrupt that, we can deal them a blow they won't recover from. Her eyes flickered over the battle plans. The Federation's stronghold was known an imposing fortress planet, the heart of their military and political power. If they could infiltrate that world, hit them at the core, and disable their central command system, it would cripple their entire war effort. Ava wasn't just thinking of a single victory here. She was thinking of how to shift the entire balance of power. Humanity would show the galaxy that their place in it was earned, not given. The human forces were scattered, but not without purpose. The Gerians had already pledged their full support, and now, humanity's forces had an edge they hadn't had before: stealth. With the Gerians' skills in subterfuge and their unmatched ability to strike without being seen, they would infiltrate the Federation's inner defenses. Together they would reach the heart of the Federation's power, their command center, protected by layers of defense that no one had ever breached. "We launch tonight," Ava declared, standing tall. Her mind was already calculating the risks, the potential outcomes, and the sacrifices they might need to make. The Federation would never see this coming. In the final preparations, the crew of the Vanguard was in high spirits, but there was a palpable tension in the air. There were no promises of easy victories or grand celebrations. This mission was about one thing only: ending the Federation's reign of terror. It wasn't a war for glory, but for survival. For the first time, humanity stood united, not as a fractured people, but as a force that the galaxy would have to reckon with. As they neared the Federation's stronghold, Ava's gaze shifted toward the crew, who were already readying the ship's systems. Their faces reflected the seriousness of the task at hand. Every action, every decision, was critical. The Vanguard would be the spearhead of this assault, its advanced technology their main weapon. But the heart of the mission wasn't about the ship or its firepower. It was about the message they were sending. Humanity was no longer on the defensive. They weren't going to beg for mercy from a galaxy that had long abandoned them. They would take back their destiny. "Stealth mode engaged," Leo announced, as the Vanguard entered the Federation system. "We're flying blind here. It's on us now." Ava's mind was clear. The Federation may have had the strength of numbers, but humanity had the strength of will. And in this fight, that would be enough. "Stay sharp, everyone," she said. "This is it. If we get through this, the Federation will never forget who we are." The battle unfolded swiftly. The Federation had surrounded their homeworld with an impenetrable defense grid, but the Gerians' expert knowledge of covert operations allowed the humans to slip through unnoticed. They infiltrated the outer defenses without triggering alarms, creeping closer to their goal, the heart of the Federation's command network. As they approached the command center, they encountered their first real resistance. A fleet of Federation warships, stationed on the outer rim of the stronghold, immediately detected the human presence. But by then, it was too late. The Vanguard's weapon systems were already in place, and a coordinated attack from both the humans and Gerians overwhelmed the fleet in a matter of minutes. The Federation fleet was taken out with surgical precision, their ships crashing into the vast expanse of space as the Vanguard and Gerian ships moved deeper into enemy territory. Inside the command center, chaos erupted. The Federation's top officials scrambled to respond, but they were no match for the relentless assault humanity had unleashed. Ava's forces infiltrated the heart of the stronghold with unyielding precision. Their target was close to fail now. But as Ava watched the final seconds tick away, a cold feeling gripped her heart. The Federation would not go down without a fight. They had one final card to play. A sudden tremor shook the entire base. Ava's eyes widened as the Federation launched their last-ditch countermeasure, a self-destruct sequence meant to take everything down with them. But Ava was prepared for that too. With a quick command, she triggered the emergency override. The Federation would not have the satisfaction of taking them down with a final act of defiance. As the countdown stopped and the Federation's command center fell into silence, the victory was undeniable. Humanity had reached the heart of the Federation's power and crippled it, but Ava knew the war was far from over. The galaxy would never forget the message they had just sent. Humanity had returned, and they would not go quietly. The silence that followed the fall of the Federation's command center was deafening. Ava Carter stood at the helm of the Vanguard, her hands gripping the console as the ship hovered above the wreckage of what had once been the heart of the Federation. The hum of the ship's systems was the only sound, a quiet reminder that the battle was far from over. Despite the victory they had just achieved, the Federation, with all its might and pride, had been brought to its knees. But Ava knew that they wouldn't stay down for long. The Federation was relentless, and they would retaliate. Ava's thoughts shifted to the galaxy. The balance of power had shifted, and humanity had shown its strength. But it wasn't just about defeating the Federation. This moment was about something bigger, something that would ripple across the stars for generations to come. Humanity had reminded the galaxy that they were no longer the forgotten species, left to fade into the corners of history. They were a force to be reckoned with. Leo Dawes approached, his face weary but filled with a quiet pride. "We did it, Ava. We've shattered their command. The Federation won't recover from this." Ava nodded, her eyes still fixed on the dark void of space. "This is just the beginning. We've taken their heart, but we need to take their soul as well. We can't stop now." The Vanguard was silent, as though the ship itself understood the weight of what they had just accomplished. The battle had been brutal, but it had shown humanity's true potential. Ava had always known they were capable of greatness, but now, the entire galaxy had witnessed it. The Federation had underestimated humanity's strength, and now the galaxy had to deal with the consequences. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore," Leo said, his voice steady. "We're fighting for our place in the galaxy. We're not asking for a seat at the table, we're taking it." Ava turned to face him, her expression hardening. "Exactly. We've taken back what was ours, and we won't let anyone take it from us again." But even as she spoke, doubts lingered in her mind. The Federation might have been dealt a crippling blow, but Ava knew there were others who still saw humanity as a threat. Other factions in the galaxy, more powerful than the Federation, were watching closely. They had seen what had happened to the Federation, and they would not let humanity rise unchallenged. It wasn't just about fighting, it was about diplomacy, alliances, and ensuring that humanity didn't isolate itself in the chaos of war. Ava had already started to reach out to other alien factions, offering peace, but with the understanding that humanity would no longer be second-class citizens in the galaxy. She knew they had to be cautious, but she also knew they had to show the galaxy that humanity's future was no longer up for negotiation. The next few days were a blur of activity. The Vanguard and its allied fleets continued their operations, securing vital systems and sending messages to other factions in the galaxy. Humanity had allies now, but they needed more. The Gerians, the first to join the fight, were invaluable. But there were others who could turn the tide in the larger battle ahead. Some were hesitant, unsure of what a partnership with humanity would mean. Others saw the potential for an alliance that could challenge the Federation's long-standing hold on the galaxy. Ava was determined to convince them. But as negotiations continued, word began to spread. The Vanguard had struck at the very heart of the Federation, and the galaxy was beginning to take notice. Messages flooded in from across the stars, from those who had once watched humanity's fall with indifference and those who had dismissed them as nothing more than a lost cause. The Federation was still a formidable force, but humanity had proven that they were no longer the easy target they once were. Ava sat at the table with the representatives of the Gerians, her fingers tapping thoughtfully against the surface. "We've proven ourselves," she said, her voice firm, "but we cannot stop here. The Federation will rebuild, and there will be others who will try to challenge us. We need to build alliances, not just for our survival, but to ensure our place in the galaxy." The Gerians were quiet, their eyes glimmering with a mixture of respect and wariness. "You've done what no one expected," one of them said, "but the Federation isn't your only threat. There are others, older factions that have seen empires rise and fall. You've earned our respect, but the true test is still ahead." Ava met their gaze. "I know, but we are not the same humans you remember. We are stronger now, and we will face whatever comes together." The Gerians nodded, their expressions still unreadable. Ava knew it wasn't a matter of winning them over, it was about proving that humanity wasn't just a flash in the pan. They were in it for the long haul, and Ava was prepared to do whatever it took to secure humanity's future. As negotiations continued, Ava found herself looking at the stars outside the Vanguard's windows. The galaxy had been forever changed. By humanity's return, the Federation might have been wounded, but the battle was far from over. Ava knew the true power of humanity wasn't in its weapons or technology, it was in their resilience, their will to fight for what was theirs, and their unbreakable determination to never be forgotten again. Humanity had been silent for too long, but now their roar echoed across the stars. The galaxy had learned one undeniable truth: humanity had returned, and this time, they were here to stay. The future was uncertain, filled with challenges and enemies, but Ava Carter had never been more certain of one thing: humanity would rise. They had already fought their way back from the edge of oblivion. and now they would fight for a future where they would never be silenced again.